We get vitamin B12 from animal food sources like meats and cheeses. And when we consume vitamin B12, it is first going to be attached to a animal protein. Now, this B12 animal protein complex is then going to reach the stomach, and then it is going to encounter acid and pepsin that is found in the stomach. And the acid and the pepsin in the stomach is going to break up this B12 animal protein complex. Now, once this complex is broken up, the salivary glands produce a protein called an R protein. And when vitamin B12 is by itself, R protein is then going to attach to B12 and form a R protein B12 complex. Now, this complex is going to travel to the duodenum. And in the duodenum, it is going to encounter pancreatic proteases released from the pancreas. And these pancreatic proteases are then going to break up this complex. And now we're going to have B12 by itself again. Parietal cells in the stomach are going to produce something called intrinsic factor. This is very important because it is going to allow for the absorption of vitamin B12. Once vitamin B12 is by itself in the duodenum, intrinsic factor is going to come to the duodenum and bind B12. After binding B12, this complex is then going to travel to the terminal ileum, also known as the distal ileum, and this is going to be the site of vitamin B12 absorption. In the terminal ileum, we're going to have intrinsic factor B12 receptors, which now this complex is going to bind to, and now we're going to get the intracellular effects of vitamin B12 as a result. Now, it is really important to know that terminal ileum is going to be the site of absorption for vitamin B12 because this is where we have the intrinsic factor B12 receptors. And it is also really important to know that we need intrinsic factor for vitamin B12 absorption. Now, questions that you might get on this topic are most likely what is going to happen if there is damage to the terminal ileum? Well, because terminal ileum is the site of absorption for vitamin B12, we will have a vitamin B12 deficiency. Another question that you might encounter is what would happen if you have damage to the parietal cells of the stomach? Well, because the parietal cells of the stomach produce intrinsic factor, and because intrinsic factor is responsible for the absorption of vitamin B12, we will also have a B12 deficiency. Now, if someone has a stomach cancer, for example, and as a result of this cancer, if the surgeon has to remove the stomach, the patient will have to have vitamin B12 injections for the rest of their life. And the reason for this is because remember, parietal cells of the stomach produce intrinsic factor, which is responsible for vitamin B12 absorption. So if we remove the stomach for whatever reason, then we will also have to do vitamin B12 injections for the rest of the patient's life. So this was vitamin B12 absorption. Thank you for watching. I hope this video helps.